what is this custom scanner framework, right? So it can extract pretty much any custom model through an open framework. I'll take you through the steps. I'll be doing, like a demo. I'll tell you, how to kind of log in and do this. But very quickly, this is a separate resource type called as a custom resource type. You can see from your, your catalog administrator. And then pretty much you can create any model that suits your requirements, right? So the key functionality will include like search lineage, and pretty much anything else can be, will be available for custom objects. Custom lineage scanner can be used to add lineage links for custom objects. I'm going to cover this very important point in my next slide, right? So now let me talk about this whole custom framework a little further, right? Now, your typical BI resource type, let's say has a model, it has a report, and it has a few sheets. Now it has a few metrics, right? So your custom model is nothing but an XML file that you have to create based on what are called as classes and attributes and associations, right? So what are these classes, attributes, and associations? Classes is nothing but, it is kind of similar to, let's say, your schemas, views, and tables. These are all as classes. Attributes are something that you're very familiar. For example, the name, the abbreviation, the usage, the context, the description, anything that kind of represents, a class are called as attributes. And association, right? So, for example, a report and a sheet have a parent-child association. So this association is important, especially to kind of represent hierarchy and to also show lineage, right? So that's another key component of your custom framework, which is that of your association. Now I'm going to talk about how do you create and extract from custom scanners. I'm going to take you through the steps right now. Firstly, I'll just list down a few steps. I've listed down a few steps in the PPT, but I'll quickly jump into my EIC instance. I'm going to be creating one. Okay, so what are the steps, right? So it's a simple set of steps. Firstly, you'll have to create your custom model through an XML file. Once you create that, you'll have to select the connection types, and you have to create your custom resources, right? So basically, you're modeling, let's say a database which is not there. So you're actually modeling the database, and then you're creating a resource type for that, model, and then finally you go ahead and you create the resource directly. And then what do you do after you create the resource is actually you link that custom resource to, let's say, a native resource that's present as part of EIC. So I don't want to confuse too further. So what I'll do is I'll jump on to this demo set right away, right? So before I do that, okay, let me kind of jump into the demo here. Obviously, you would have seen the two services. One is you have your catalog admin, and then you have your actual EIC instance, right? So let me open the catalog administrator, right? So let me quickly log in. All right, so let's say that the user wants to create a catalog, let's say the user wants to create a model. So what the user really does, right? So firstly, the user goes to the models tab here, right? And you see a set of system models and your custom models, right? So to create a new custom model is pretty simple. You just point to a new custom model, and you have to point to the XML file that you must have created in the first place. Now, this XML file is available as part of your documentation for your reference, and what this XML file really is something that I'll show you, right? So this is your XML file. This pretty much indicates what your custom model really is, right? I mean, this might sound or this might look rather complex, but it's not, right? So, for example, this is a Microsoft Access database that I want to create a custom model with. So I label the package as Microsoft Access or Access database. Obviously, a database will have several classes. It'll have a schema. It'll have a table. table here. It'll have a table column, and obviously it's going to have some views as well, right? So these are the classes, right? Now if I just go a little further, a view also has a view column. If I go to the next section, which are the attributes, right? So what are the qualities? So obviously you have, the name, you have the abbreviation, you have the business usage, and a whole bunch of attributes, right? So these are the attributes. And then finally, we come down to the end of it, and you have your associations. Now, what these associations are, for example, it tells you, from a schema to a table is a parent-child relationship, right? So it tells you that schema is a parent and then table is a child. Now, if I step down further, it says a table to a column is again a parent and child, which means column is a child and then table is a parent. So if I, let's say, upload this particular file, right, which is your access db.xml, right, I should immediately be able to see the model. Since I've already created the model, let me show that to you right away. Now this is the same model that you're seeing in a in a XML file. You're seeing this here in EIC, right? So you're seeing you have your access database, you have your access schema, and this has table views and it has columns. So with the hierarchy as on, you're seeing this as a hierarchy. If you want to flatten it out for some reason, you can always do that, but it's going to flatten it out completely and it's going to show you without any hierarchy, right? So, but once again, so these are your classes, right? So you have your schemas, you have your tables, and you have your columns. And then obviously you have some attributes like name, data type, length, and so on. And then you have your associations, right? So you have you have your parent-child relationship from schema to table, from table to column, and so on, right? So you basically have all of these relationships available for this custom resource, right? So with that said, this is your model, right? So what is your next step, right? So your next step is to go and then create a custom resource type. For that, I just go to a custom resource type. I select a custom resource type. I can just name anything. I just say new custom resource type, and I have to select the model that I just created, right? So this is the Access DB model that I created. So I select this, and then I provide a connection information, right? So for example, what do I want to connect to? Obviously, I want to connect to a schema, so I just mention this, and I just say, okay. So I've already created it, so I'll just kind of cancel this out. This is basically your custom resource type. And why the step is important is because you're going to basically fill out a template, right? So the next step here is to export your template, right? So it's just a simple click. It automatically downloads this to your box. And this has a set of 2 zip files, right? So one is your objects, and the second zip file that you have are your links. So let me go to the objects first, right? So basically, the file that you're going to see is just going to have this header. That's it, right? So I have just filled this out for your benefit, right? So this thing takes time, and obviously this is a one-time effort, right? So you can obviously fill this up, and then you can continue to maintain it, right? So the first one is the objects. It's telling you what are the objects in your custom resource. For example, I have 2 schema in my database, which are Hermes and then Wembley. Under Hermes, I have a table called as customer. And under customer table, I have 2 columns as customer ID and customer name. At the same time, I have a view as a v underscore customer, and then these 2 are the view columns, right? Now, if let's say the Wembley schema has any other tables, obviously let me just copy this. So I have to just copy this. I have to go to the end of the tab and then just kind of paste this, except that I have to place something like Wembley underscore W underscore customer is a table, and this is a Wembley, and I say that this is an access table, and this belongs to Wembley, and then kind of so on, right? So I can obviously go and then create, these resources. These objects as part of the resource, right? So that's my first step of the custom resource. What is your next step? You have to go to your second, CSV file, which really tells you the links, right? For example, it kind of tells you, what is your parent and then what is your child, to establish hierarchy, to know exactly the associations, right? For example, your Access DB has your Hermes and then Wembley, as your, schema. At the same time, your Hermes database, it has a customer, the Hermes customer, it has your customer ID and so on. It's basically saying what is parent and then what is a child. So obviously for, users, it might seem that this is obvious, but, saying that this is the child and this is the parent, but most of the times you have pretty much abstract and then gibberish information, right? So you don't have these simple, straightforward names. You have something like A, B, C, D, E, X, Y, Z, and so on. So it's important to establish, the relationships in the links, tab here. So once I have these two CSV files ready, the next step is to actually go and to load these resources, right? So the next step over here is to go to the Resources tab and to go and load this resource. For example, I created one here already, and I'm going to again, zip this access database .zip file, and I'm just going to, run this. Basically, if I run it, I should be able to load this resource in the Enterprise Information Catalog. By that, what do I mean is, let's say I log into EIC. Just hold on one sec. Okay, so I log in once again. Now I log into EIC. Till now, I have logged in to my catalog admin, right? So now let me log into EIC. So I've logged in now to EIC. All right, so this is my EIC launch page. If I click on, let's say, the resources that I have, right? So I'm going to, select, the resource type that is of interest to me, right? For example, Access database. Why is this interesting is because we don't have a native connectivity to this database, and neither do we have any UCF or a MIDI bridge to this database, right? So this is a custom created database that we just created. So I'm just going to select OK. And I'm going to see a new Access DB, right? So, okay, what's interesting, right? So now we are, going one step deeper into the whole Access DB as a resource. It has two schemas, one table and one view, right? So this is kind of this resonates with what we have in the objects. Obviously, we have two schemas, we have one table, and we have one view. Obviously, this last line I just added right now, so we just delete it. So this spreadsheet is the one that I just loaded just a few minutes back, right? So let me click on this particular table, right? So the only table that I have right now is customer, right? So customer, if I again select this, there's customer ID and customer name. These are the same columns that I just loaded, manually through the custom, scanner that we had, right? So now there is a next problem, right? So what the sequence of steps they tell you are firstly how do you create a model? You create a model through your XML file. You provide these values in your two CSV files, and then you load it to create your resource. But your problem doesn't solve there, does it? It doesn't solve. Why it doesn't solve is because now you have your customer table and you want to establish lineage, right? Obviously, data flows into the Access DB from someplace, and you want to link that. And for that, you use what is called as a custom lineage scanner, right? So custom lineage scanner is basically, it kind of tells you from where to where is this data flowing. For example, from demo customer, from Oracle table, it's flowing to a customer table of Access DB. So it's basically saying that data is flowing through this way, and even at a column level, right? So for example, name is going to customer name here, and customer ID is going to a customer ID here, and the from connection is Oracle, and the to connection is Access DB. So you have to create this CSV file for the linking of, let's say, a custom resource with a native resource or with any other resource, right? So that's your last step. I'm going to take you through that last step in just a bit, right? So for that, I have to again go back to the the administrator. Now there, once again, I create a custom lineage scanner this time, right? So I have already created for your benefit. It's the same CSV file that you have right here is something that I just created, right? So once this runs, right? So once the run is successful, you will then need to link this, right? For example, you need to tell the system, what Oracle connection this is from, and in what because there are multiple Oracle connections available, right? So for that, you have to go to your connection assignment page, right? For example, here is what we have, the custom lineage access. So we are saying that Oracle points to a Hermes schema, and Access DB, it points to the new Access DB schema that we just created. So this is your last step, and once you do that, you should be able to see this in your lineage. So let me go to the lineage and impact part here. So I did run this just before, so I just did all the steps just before this demo. So when you do that, you should be able to see your lineage. For example, your new Access DB, your data is coming from your Hermes database, which is your Oracle, which is of Oracle database, and it has a table name called as demo customer. You can, at the same time, you can perform some level of detailed lineage, for example, to know where your name is coming from. You can do that as well. So as you can see, the customer name is coming from the name column of your demo customer, and also this has an associated view, which is your customer name. You can obviously switch it back, to a table level, and you can view your table level lineage, right? So so basically, it's a simple sequence of a few steps where you create the model XML file, you create your resource type, you create your resources, and once that is done, you have to create what is called as a custom lineage resource, uploading the respective CSV file and do the connection assignment, and the user will be able to see the lineage, right? So, these are simple, set of steps for you to create a custom resource that didn't exist before. There are no bridges, but at the same time, you can create one and also establish your lineage, especially when you're doing a customer assignment as part of IPS, right? So with that said, we are almost close to the hour. I want to maybe take about 5 minutes of questions, and then I'll send the link for deployment to Barbara, and she can in turn, let's say, forward it to all the participants. So yeah, I can maybe take a few questions. Barbara, you want to maybe read it out if there are any?
Sure. You can chat your questions in the chat room, or if you'd like to come off of mute, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Raising your hand is a prompt at the bottom of your participant list. So you open up the participant panel, and you list all the users. You'll see at the bottom there's a little gray hand. You can click that. I'm doing it right now. Sunil has the first question. Sunil?
Yeah. Hi, Prem. This is Sunil from IPS. In
Hey, Sunil.
Metadata Manager, when we create a custom model, we were able to create that model XML file using the interface by creating the objects, the classes, and all those things in the model. But in EIC, based on what you are showing, we have to create that XML file out of the interface?
Yeah, XML file, you're saying a way to create your models directly is what you're saying, right? For example, see the two things that you can do, right? For example, let me go back to your models here, right? See, you have your custom model, and then you have your system model, right? So you can either, let's say, export your custom model and then extrapolate on that, or even your system model, right? You can sort of kind of fit it to your custom resource, and you can make your changes. As far as having a more intuitive UI with a kind of a plus sign that what you used to have in MM, yeah, we are kind of looking at it, but I think this is the best way to go forward as of now. So you can use any of the models, and you can either export it, and you can either reuse that content, or you can, let's say, even update it, right? So you can even update this, but you need to have that XML file with you.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Anyone else with any questions? Okay.
All right. So, thank you all. I think that's, I just wanted to bring about this very important point of custom resource. Before I end the call, once again, to all the IPS participants, you're going to get a link, from Barbara. I'll be sending this to her immediately, and then she in turn is going to forward to all of you. That link is going to have, a deep dive into deployment. So all of your questions will be answered in that session separately. So we just did that before we did the session. So once again, custom scanners is pretty important, I think, because I'm sure that in your IPS engagements, most of your resources are covered natively. They might have around, let's say, 20 different resource types, right? Like Oracle or DB2, SQL Server, these Hive, HDFS, and all these SFDC and so on. But there might be, let's say, one or two that's not either covered natively or through UCF, and that is where you use these custom sources. And another important point, right? So for any of the custom resources that you create, please share it in the EIC community. We want to build the largest customer base of, let's say, the scanners that we have, or the custom scanners that we have. I'm not sure if all of you have seen the EIC community. It is basically, going to your communities, and it's under EIC. Please, register there. This is for our partners. All you have to do is go to Big Data and then register to EIC, and then you're there in the community. So the community basically, has questions from our customers and partners. We have a catalog of information there. What we also plan to do is we plan to add all of your custom scanners